While most of our favorite summer festivals are one day or one weekend only, Ravinia's festival season is all summer long. Pick from over 100 great concerts between now and September, and I kinda need y'all help. For real, this ain't even an ad anymore. I need to know which show or shows I should go to. We got The Roots, or a Chicago Philharmonic tribute to Whitney Houston, or we got TLC and Shaggy. I can't decide, but what I do know is at some point, I'm out there with a loaded picnic bag and a nice blanket. But you can get yourself a pavilion seat if you like. Buy your tickets now only at ravinia.org. All right, for real though. Who should I pick?
Today on CityCast Chicago, a heat wave hits the city. We're making new animal friends. And can you guess these city council quotes? I'm here with producer Michelle Navarro to break it all down. It's Tuesday, June 18th. I'm Simona Licea in for Jacoby Cochran. And this is what Chicago's talking about. Good morning, Michelle. How are you?
Good morning, Simone. I'm well. How are you doing?
I am doing okay. Missing our regular host, Jacoby Cochran, obviously, but we will soldier on, I suppose. Well, I think the big thing that's on everyone's minds this week is we are likely to see 90 plus degree temperatures pretty much every day this week. We have something called a heat dome that is settling over the Midwest. Basically, it traps heat in an area, and we have like no clouds, so we're just going to be kind of baking in the sun over the next week, and the humidity is going to make it feel even hotter. Michelle, how are you staying cool this week?
Definitely staying inside, especially during those peak like hot hours. If there's no need for me to step outside from the hours of like 11 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m., then I'm just probably going to stay inside. I'm really lucky that I have central air. This is one of the first apartments in a really long time that actually has central air. But of course, you know, if I am outside, staying in shade under some trees, using sunscreen always, you know, regardless of a heat wave or not, you know, also protecting your eyes, sunglasses, using fresh fabrics. So like fresh linen. I wore some linen pants yesterday, and I feel like you would think wearing pants, like, oh, you should wear shorts, but I feel like wearing linen pants kept my legs less sweaty and just like more fresh.
Light layers can actually do more, right? If you're wearing a white long sleeve shirt, if it's light, if it's cotton or linen or something like that, that can do more. Like wearing a hat, right? Actually protecting yourself from the sun, like that can do a lot more than, you know, bearing out all the skin, even if that might be what you want to do when it gets hot outside.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, drinking plenty of water.
Especially, I feel like when it comes to things like, you know, you and I are lucky we work from home. But like, you know, we have little routines. Like I went out to get a coffee, right, this morning, and it was already very, very hot. And like, man, why is this walk making me so much more tired than usual? Maybe because it's almost 90 degrees outside and it's like, I'm burning up.
Right. No, the sun really does a number on you. And when you add that extra heat and humidity, definitely start feeling the effects. So it's super important to remember the signs of heat exhaustion, which is, you know, something that's really common, especially for people who have to be outside for periods of time. Like you said, commuting, walking around, if you're catching a bus, even waiting for a bus can probably be tiring during this time. And so just a reminder of the signs and symptoms of heat exhaustion. There's dizziness, heavy sweating, thirst, nausea, and that feeling of fatigue and weakness. If, you know, we don't pay attention to the signs of heat exhaustion, they can definitely lead to heat stroke, which is where this gets much, much more serious. You know, heat stroke can lead to feelings of dizziness as well, but it also leads to feelings of confusion and can even lead to someone being unconscious. And so if you do feel a heat stroke or you see someone who may have one, definitely act fast, seek medical attention, and call 911. Super important thing to look out for, especially those who are more vulnerable to heat, those who may have, you know, other underlying diseases, or people who are older are definitely more at risk.
Speaking of that, another thing to keep in mind if you live, particularly if you live in a bigger building, is remember Chicago now has a cooling ordinance. This was passed in 2022, requiring residential buildings to install air conditioning equipment in common areas and that it has to be available when the heat index exceeds 80 degrees. And for reference, the heat index this week is supposed to be 100 or higher even in some places this week. This is the year that landlords were supposed to install permanent equipment in these areas to comply, and it applies to high-rise buildings, buildings with more than 100 units, or housing for older people. And so if you are living in a building like this and you are not seeing these cooling resources in place, definitely get in contact with your landlord or look this up and try to see if you can make that happen.
And, if the cooling ordinance may not, apply to you.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to everyone, right? If you're in a smaller building.
There's going to be cooling centers open, about 6 of them that the city is offering for those vulnerable to heat. They're open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. The centers are scattered across the city. There's the Inglewood Center, Garfield Center, King Center, North Area Center, South Chicago Center, and Trina Davila Center. This is in addition to the Park District sites, community colleges, libraries, senior centers, all these kind of already open spaces that the city has for people to use. Block Club Chicago has a great map of resources that we've linked in the show notes.
And then the last thing to keep in mind is if you're going to stay cool, the other thing to know, Chicago Park District opened all 77 public pools for the season on Monday. And so pools are open, the beaches are open if you need to take a dip. And then, of course, the Humboldt Park Lagoon Beach is also now open for the first time in 4 years. And so there are spots if you are trying to be outside, maybe the water is your better bet.
For sure. No, definitely. Be in water while you drink some water, but don't drink the lake or pool water.
Yes, that's the wrong water to drink.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try to get to a pool this week. We were talking about this in our morning meeting. I'm so sensitive to heat. Like, I need the room cold so I could still be covered in a blanket. Like, that's how I like to sleep.
Well, that's the other thing about this week is it's supposed to be in the mid 70s at night. Like, it's still supposed to be quite warm, even when it's just pitch black outside.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is a good time to, utilize the resources out in the city and definitely get into the community pools and, make some fun out of it if you can.
So we all know how much I personally love trivia and games. And, there is always news coming out of City Council. So I thought it would be fun to do a little Guess Who Said It quiz. So, Michelle, here's how this is going to work. I'm going to give you 3 quotes. Each of them came from a different Chicago alderperson in the past month or so. And I want you to tell me which alderperson said it and what the quote was about. And not only am I going to make this a multiple choice quiz, but it's actually going to be the same 3 choices for each question. So basically, I'm asking you to match the older person with the quote. Sound good to you?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So this one comes from the May 22nd City Council meeting. And the quote goes, "I dare my colleague to take that resolution to that man's wife and children." And here are your options. Was it 6th Ward Alderperson William Hall, who represents parts of Englewood, Greater Grand Crossing? Was it 17th Ward Alderperson David Moore, who represents Auburn Gresham, Marquette Park? Or was it 38th Ward Alderperson Nick Sposato, who represents parts of Portage Park, Dunning, far northwest side?
So I do remember this quote.
Do you remember what it's about?
I do remember it because we had a Friday News Roundup episode where we talked about this story. And I'm pretty sure it is referencing the resolution to have CTA President Dorval Carter to resign.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I remember this is Jacoby said, you would never say that about someone you're trying to hold accountable. So it's kind of unfair to be like, well, what about this dude's kids and wife? So that kind of reminded me. I don't know who exactly said it, but I do remember it is someone on the South Side.
Yes. So between Alderman Moore and Alderman Hall, who do you think it is?
I'm going to go with Hall just because that's the first one you said. And so I'm just going to lock in William Hall.
You got it right. You're there. Ding, 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 ding. There it is.
That's what happens when you listen to the episodes.
I got to say, this council meeting, the whole thing, there were several things that were said at this meeting and about this resolution that prompted us to want to create a game around guessing that quote, and which is why we had to bring this back, because there were several things that were said at that meeting. But I dare my colleague to take that resolution to that man's wife and children, referring to Dorval Carter's wife and children. So the next one was something that was said to the Chicago Tribune in an interview following last week's council meeting on June 12th. The quote goes, "If you slap me, I'm going to hit you with a bat. If you hit me with a bat, I'm going to shoot you with a gun." Can you tell me which alderperson said this from the choices that we already listed, or what this is about?
I have no idea. I didn't catch this coverage, so I'm sure it was like, we already know city council be a little messy, they be a little petty, like this is not new. This sounds like something that would probably even happen in the chamber, but I'm like, this sounds like something that would happen like between like a heated, argument between two aldermen. Like I can totally see this happening. But okay, since we eliminated 6th Ward, William Hall, we have 2 choices left. See, like, I know David Moore on the South Side, he's very like anti-crime. Like I did read that, he did recently say he was going to sleep outside on the streets to, stop drug dealing and crimes from happening in his neighborhood. So that makes me want to eliminate him, because it's like, why would you say I'm going to shoot somebody? If you're, you know what I mean? Like that doesn't click. I don't know much about Nick Sposato. So I guess I'm going to go with C.
You think it's 38th Ward Alderperson Nick Sposato?
Yeah.
That is incorrect. You really out-logicked yourself there. It was 17th Ward Alderman David Moore. So here's what happened, Michelle, is David Moore, you might recall, sponsored an ordinance trying to give city council the last say on getting ShotSpotter in their wards and stuff, right after Mayor Brandon Johnson ended the contract. And now that's very messy and kind of up in the air. So that ordinance that Moore had sponsored was what's called deferred and published. Basically, they delayed the vote on it so that they couldn't vote on it during that meeting. So then what happened is one of the alder people who've moved to defer and publish, that was 1st Ward Alderman Daniel Espada. He had an ordinance that was then up aimed at adding housing in Logan Square. It was a development ordinance. And then Alderman Moore moved to defer and publish that legislation. And it was wide and pretty much outright said that it was in retaliation for delaying the vote on the ShotSpotter ordinance. Heated words were exchanged. There was kind of a spat on the council floor. Another alderperson had to step between them because it's very unusual, particularly in development cases, for another alderperson to kind of step on another alderman's prerogative, right? And so, yeah, Moore and Laspada had words, and then afterwards, the Tribune talked to Alderman Moore, and Moore sort of using this as a metaphor said, "If you slap me, I'm going to hit you with a bat. If you hit me with a bat, I'm going to shoot you with a gun." He said, "Leave David Moore alone," is what he kept saying.
I mean, if it is a metaphor, it's still a pretty intense metaphor. But, it's funny, too, because I'm thinking about my logic, right? I said, like, okay, this is an alderman who cares about his community. So he's posted up outside, sleeping outside to be like, I will stop the crime that is occurring in this neighborhood. Like, if no one else can, I will, But, like, the fact that he's, like, about that action and was able to, like, I'm like, okay, now I could see actually why he would, let people know not to mess with him.
I don't know. I think it's messy, Michelle. I think it's so messy and unnecessary. The whole thing.
Oh, no, like, it is super messy. So, yeah, this was an intense one.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see that housing proposal has now been delayed basically by a month until the city council can vote on it again. But I don't know. People think city council's boring, and you hear words about like parliamentary maneuvers, and you're like, what does that mean? And this is what it means. It gets very messy.
No, people forget that there's a bunch of Chicagoans in there.
This last quote was said to WBEZ in a story that published on Friday. And the quote is, "I thought a couple others would have had some balls to support a guy that helped them forever." And now by process of elimination, we know who said this. That was 38th Ward Alderman Nick Sposato. But can you tell me, what is this quote about? Who is Alderman Sposato talking about supporting?
Can you give me a hint? So I assume that this is someone well known.
Yes, it's someone well known who we've covered on the show before.
Larry Snelling?
No. It's about a former alderperson.
Oh, former.
You know this person very well, Michelle.
Oh, Ed Burke.
Yes.
my former alderman, of course.
Yes, this is about former Alderman Ed Burke. Specifically, the sentencing of former Alderman Burke is coming up next week here. And Burke was convicted on several counts of racketeering and various corruption charges back in the fall. And his sentencing is coming up, and several people, including Alderman Nick Sposato, have come out in support of the former alderman, saying that he should get a reduced sentence, partly because of Burke's age, but for other reasons as well. WBEZ's Mariah Woelfel wrote this great story talking to, several different current aldermen about where they stand on it. Some agree with Sposato. Others are like, no, he should serve time for what he did. It's a very interesting story. I highly recommend people check it out. But this quote definitely jumped out to me just in thinking about everything that's happened so far. And right, so much about that trial was about the Chicago way and what it, patronage and the scratching of backs and et cetera, et cetera. And so I just thought this was such an interesting quote to come out of that. I really encourage people to go. We're going to link these stories in the show notes. You should definitely check them out, and make sure when you read these stories, read the quotes, guys. Got to read the quotes. They're the best part. There's no better way to end the show than with some cute animal news. We've got some zoo news, some bird news, and a story that involves both. Michelle, where should we start?
Lincoln Park Zoo is home to the endangered colony of black-crowned night herons. The birds, which have been listed as endangered in Illinois since 1977, have been building their nests and setting up camp this spring. The colony has been in Lincoln Park since 2007. Specifically in the Children's Zoo.
Right. So this story was delightful, and I had no idea. I've been to the Lincoln Park Zoo, I don't know how many times, but basically, right, these are not birds that are held captive in the zoo. It's not like they're part of the zoo. They are wild birds who have decided that the best place to settle a nest is at the Lincoln Park Zoo and at the Children's Zoo specifically. And they have to actually close the Children's Zoo while they're nesting and while the chicks are fledging to give them space. I think this is such a fun story to me because they're trying to get the birds to nest in other parts around the city, places like Big Marsh Park, but they prefer the zoo. They just like it better.
And that to me is the best part of the story, because there's a couple reasons why they chose the Children's Zoo at Lincoln Park Zoo. One, of course, like there's plenty of trees, right? I mean, it's already a zoo, so it's kind of set up for animals to engage with and to be around, right? The best part is that the reason why they keep nesting in this specific area is because they feel very protected due to the wolves and the bears in the area. These larger predators, of course, they can't easily climb up trees and get to their eggs, but smaller animals like raccoons and possums and even snakes, they of course, will easily climb up a tree and, eat their eggs. And so having these larger predators know that they scare off these smaller predators. And so they just feel like ultimately they just feel very safe to nest here and to chill here, and so I think that's really sweet. The Lincoln Park Zoo workers are, doing what they can to care for the colony because, of course, they're endangered. So they want to make sure that they're safe and feel at home. They're even putting up signs like letting visitors know to kind of excuse the mess because, of course, where there's birds, there's going to be bird droppings.
Yeah, the wolves and bears are actually in the zoo, and so it's super interesting. In other zoo news, at the Brookfield Zoo, today, folks can see some new arrivals, koalas. There are going to be 2, Brumby and Willem, who are going to be viewable starting at 2:00 today. They are the first koalas that have been in Brookfield in the entire zoo's history, and they are on loan from the Australian government. So another opportunity for folks to see some cute animals out at the Brookfield Zoo as well.
Yeah, and they're supposed to be here it's a 2-year loan. And so, if you want to catch these koalas, definitely do it within the 2-year mark. I thought this was funny when I read that it was a loan, countries just loan out animals. But then I remembered hearing about China doing that with their pandas and how they kind of requested their pandas back, which is so real, that's from where they're from.
Fun fact. Did you know the first live panda to ever make an appearance in the United States was at the Brookfield Zoo?
Wow.
Yeah.
It is a very bougie, beautiful zoo.
It is.
I think I've only been once for a field trip in first grade, but I remember it being a really beautiful zoo.
Yes. So this was in 1937. Yeah. Our newsletter editor, Sydney Madden, wrote about it a while back. You can find that on our website, chicago.citycast.fm. It's a really interesting story, but yeah, countries are out here loaning animals. Last animal story I wanted to touch on, just because this is near and dear to my heart and also just to my neighborhood. We've got piping plover eggs at Montrose Beach. We have been following the saga of the piping plovers here at CityCast Chicago, as the rest of Chicago has for many years now. Just to catch you up, these eggs are the offspring of Imani, who himself is the offspring of beloved piping plover couple Monty and Rose. Imani met Sea Rocket this spring, and now they have a full clutch of eggs at Montrose Beach, which is in a protected area. So that is really exciting. We're going to have more plovers, Michelle. Chicago will have plovers. We'll be able to continue to talk about plovers for another generation at least, we hope.
I love that. I think plovers are so cute. So the more the merrier.
So yeah, we've got herons, we've got koalas, we've got plovers. We are just awash in animal stories this week. Michelle and I appreciate you for breaking them down with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And some good news to get you through. Tomorrow is Juneteenth. We've got a breakdown of the history of the holiday plus a list of events over at chicago.citycast.fm. Speaking of which, we are going to be off for Juneteenth, but Jacoby will be back Thursday, along with CityCast Chicago contributor Greta Johnson, breaking down what to do this weekend. We'll talk to you then.
There should be I would be so for a reality show that follows Chicago City Council people. I just think we should do that.
What would you call it? What would you workshop this right now? What would you call this show?
I'm trying to find names that are similar to reality shows I already see.
I don't know. Let us know. If you've got a name for this reality TV show that we're making up, let us know. Shoot us a text, 773-780-0246. I don't know if I'm going to include this, but